What up everybody, it's your boy JT and I'm back again for another retrospective, and this time, I want to try something different. Something a little more story driven, and lucky for me, I happened to come across a game like that in the form of Brok the Investigator made by Cowcat. So fun fact, I actually came across this game during the Sage Expo livestreams I did last year, and no joke, I only decided to download and try this game out because it was next to another Brok game. Like, what are the chances? There was Brok Crocodile made by Outta, which is a 2D platformer, which was a pretty enjoyable time all around. But when I tried Brok the Investigator out afterwards, I was immediately interested in it. In fact, I'm gonna jump the gun right now and say I love this game. After just 20 minutes of playing it, I bought the full game off Steam right after that stream ended. So if you're interested in this game after watching this video, I'll leave a link in the description to the Steam page for it. It also has a console version coming out for the PS4, PS5, Xbox, and the Switch this March 1st, so look out for that too. Just as a heads up, I'm gonna be spoiling the hell out of this story throughout the whole video, so if you intend to play this game for yourself and don't want to be spoiled, I suggest you click off the video. But if you've already played it or just don't care if you're spoiled, I hope you enjoy yourselves and thanks for the support, it means a lot. You're all beautiful. Now sit back, relax, and let me tell you the tale of Brok the Investigator. Our story takes place in the country of Atlasia, where a deadly toxic haze created after a catastrophe years prior has covered a portion of the country. In order to save humanity, a portion of the country was put in a dome in order to preserve what human life was left. Those living under the dome are known as drummers, where everything looks futuristic, clean, and people have helper robots known as tribots. While those outside of the dome exposed to the haze and have to take daily tox-out pills just to survive the pollution are called slummers, where it's pretty much the ghetto. Seriously, the slums fucking blow, man. There's also a shortage going on with the tox-out pills due to the dispensers being damaged with no one knowing who caused it, so yeah, slummers got it rough, man. Our plot begins with our main character and slums resident Brok having a nightmare of being in a burning building all while trying to save his wife Leah from some falling shrapnel, who during this is calling Brok guilty and blaming him for her death. I could just leave you here, I'm just saying. He then wakes up from his nightmare to his stepson Graf, the son of Leah, who Brok took in after her death as per her final request. Graf tells Brok that he's missed several calls from a kangaroo cop named Sin, who tried to call him for a job involving helping him find and retrieve his lost gun. Upon leaving his home, Brok encounters the slum residents known as the Squealers, a group of thugs who got banished from the drums after they staged a coup 10 years ago for tribots slowly taking their jobs. They're here to kill an old homeless man for not paying off some medication he purchased from them, but my man Brok ain't having any of that. One prompt ass beating later and we meet up with Sin for more details on the missing gun. Unfortunately, we need access to the drums to continue our investigation, so we pay a visit to Brok's childhood friend and inventor Shay so she can work her hacking magic in getting us a drummer's license. After breaking into the central tower to hack it and get our forged drummer's license, our investigation takes us to a pharmacy and the sewers, home of the Squealers. After blowing them the fuck up because they were in our way, it seems the leader of the Squealers remembers Brok from 10 years ago, saying he's the reason for their banishment, even though Brok claims not to know what the hell he's talking about. Eventually, he finds Sin's gun, but after interrogating the Roo, it's revealed that Sin is actually a thief who impersonated a cop by stealing his now ex-friend RJ's uniform by drugging him in order to steal another drug from the pharmacy called Oblivion, which erases select memories, to make his wife forget an incident in which Sin supposedly cheated on her and to desperately see his daughter again. Shortly after Sin's confession, the chief of police and old acquaintance of Brok, West, bust in and arrest Brok and Sin on the spot for the recent events. Meanwhile, Graf and his friend are taking their exams in order to become full-fledged drummers while school bully and utter shithill Clay keeps giving them shit. And these are mainly Graf's sections as a whole throughout the story. I'll go into more detail about him later, so for now, we'll mainly focus on Brok. After breaking out of jail while Sin chooses to stay to atone for his sins, Brok is later made a temporary officer from West to help with a future case since they're currently understaffed, and he finds it impressive that he was able to solve Sin's case so effectively. After some one-on-one time with Graf and a 5-minute talk about space-time theory with Shay, we do some good old-fashioned illegal VR fighting for the monies and encounter a woman there who clearly has alternative motives for being there. The following day, we visit Shay, and depending on past event choices made that gives us a reason to, we have to pay a visit to the Gloom, a shady back-alley hacker. Yes, I said past event choices made. We'll get into that later. For this reason, it's to pay off some money Shay owed. On the way to the Gloom, Brok gets ambushed by the Squealers and supposedly dies during the fight with them. And then he's all better. Well, that was fucking weird. We arrive at the Gloom's hideout where we also bump into Graf and Ott's teacher and director of their school called, the Director. She's a robot who acts and behaves on a human level and is the mother of local bag of dicks Clay. She paid a visit to the Gloom in order to obtain a self-modifier chip from him, but he refused to sell to a robot, the racist bitch. She then asks Brok if he can get the chip for her, and if successful, Graf will receive bonus points for his exams, which Brok quickly agrees to. We meet up with the Gloom after getting past his bodyguard RJ, who was fired from Wes after failing to detain us, then fired again by the Gloom for failing to keep us out. I'm sorry, RJ. I swear I love you. After paying off the shady mouse, he requests our services to delete his wanted profile from the police servers, and in return he'll give us the self-modifier chip and offer more of his services in the future. After infiltrating Wes's office while he's away, we run into Otta, who is Wes's nephew and is watching his office while he's away as part of his internship. Otta leaves to go tinkle, and we access Wes's computer and delete the Gloom's profile, while also finding a couple of files on a D. Silver and R. Filch. Wes and Ott return shortly after, and Wes sends us and Ott on a missing person case happening in the drums involving a scientist. We arrive at the scene of the case only to discover that the missing scientist Dr. Hush was found dead via poisoning in the office of his colleague Dr. Mink, who obviously becomes suspect number 1. After some clue searching, it's revealed that the true culprit behind the attempted murder was Dr. Hush's helper Tidy, a robot built by Dr. Hush in order to help around the office. Yep. Attempted murder. As it turns out, Dr. Hush survived due to some medication he took prior to his assault that prevented his heart from completely stopping. Dr. Hush says he's been working on an unfinished and dangerous code he received from an anonymous scientist in the government, also known as the Triangle, that allows robots to feel emotions on a human level, and tested it out on Tidy, which made him go a little... One chase on the highway later, yeah, eat shit, you little shit! We return with the now broken bot to Wes, who is quick to relieve us of our duties after causing such a havoc with our highway chase. Brok then realizes that during his case, he's missed multiple calls and messages from Graf, who was on the verge of dying during his latest exam after fuckboy McGee Clay stole his tox-out pill in order to save his own ass. Piece of shit! Thankfully, Brok makes it home in time to save Graf with a tox-out pill, but unfortunately, Graf is still furious with Brok for not being there when he needed him the most and locks himself in his room in a huff. After Brok meets up with Shay for another night of good old illegal VR fighting, we meet up with RJ as he's here for revenge towards us after losing his job. Twice. One ass beating later, I swear I love RJ, I swear. Shay tells us that tonight's VR fight will be our last, seeing as she'll be busy tomorrow. She also gives us an envelope that says open when desperate before sending us on our way, showing that Shay has been hiding something from us for a while now. On the way home, Brok is ambushed by squealers, getting a real case of deja vu here, but whoops their asses this time, all while Graf spies on him from the shadows, as earlier he got a tip on Brok's whereabouts from an unknown user he was talking with on his tablet. They both head home, and even though the two tend to butt heads from time to time, they have a heart-to-heart and grow closer. The next day, Tribots break into Brok's house with the intent to kill him, with Brok quickly dispatching of them. Want to know why he was targeted in the first place and to solve who was behind the pill shortage I mentioned earlier, Brok sets out to investigate. He then receives a call from a Dr. Gherkin, a scientist who works at a pharmaceutical company and used to work with Leah. He requests Brok's services to protect him from Tribots he claims are targeting him, and says he can help solve the pipe pill problem by repairing the dispensers. He'll pay Brok a whopping 10 grand for his services, which Brok accepts the deal with no hesitation. During our escort with the doctor, Brok occasionally gets messages from an unknown sender warning him not to trust the doctor and that he's hiding something. While fixing one of the dispensers, Brok pays a visit back to the Gloom, who RJ lets us see since we're a client now and since the Gloom hired him, to see if he can pinpoint who's been sending Brok these warning messages. However, due to confidentiality, he won't tell us their name, but tells us that they wanted his services with topic updates on the finances from the pharmaceutical company, the government, and Sin. During this, RJ passes out from not having a tox-out pill on him, and the doctor has retreated back to his hidey home for safety since he felt unguarded. We retrieve the doctor, quickly head back to RJ, give him a tox-out pill that the doctor supplies, and RJ is saved! And now we're best buddies. Woo! I've waited for this moment for so long! I love this big lovable bear!
My friend!
Ah! Afterwards, the doctor tells us he's been in contact with a journalist since he's been away, who wants to interview him so word on the situation in the slums can get out. Though reluctant, Brok agrees and they meet up with the journalist named Dee, who turns out to be the same woman Brok fought in the VR fighting ring a couple of nights ago. However, Brok doesn't trust her outright and decides to interrogate her for more info. It's revealed that Dee is the wife of Sin and was the one who was in contact with the Gloom, as well as being the one who sent those warning messages to Brok. She believes the doctor is secretly one of the members of the government due to her few days of research digging, and wants to probe the doctor for answers regarding her and Sin's situation, as well as some information she has. But before we can get more info out of her, dozens of Tribots show up and they have to retreat to a bunker for the time being. I know I haven't talked about Graf's sections much since they're mainly about him earning points for his exams to move into the drums, but good news, he passes this time, and gets ready to move into the drums later that night. After stating the next events are a blur for him, Brok later meets up with Graf and the two have a heart-to-heart goodbye before Graf crosses over to his new life in the drums. Shortly after, it seems that the pipe pill dispensers are operational now. Guess they just took a bit to kick in after the doctor fixed them. All seems well until Brok feels a tickle in his pocket, and after checking, it shows the envelope Shay gave him earlier on is suddenly fading out of existence, and once it's gone, Brok can't seem to remember what the hell just happened. After that, the credits roll, ending Brok the Investigator. for this ending. Yeah, so if I already didn't make it obvious with the way I was explaining the story, this game has multiple endings, 11 to be exact, with one of them being the canonical ending. What I've been sharing with y'all is the drummer ending, an ending you get when Graf passes his exams by having a final score of 50 or more. It was the first ending I got when I played the game for the first time, so it was the first I wanted to talk about. Try your best on these exams too if you're going for this ending. Since these exams were for slummers only, and since Brok essentially forged his drummer license for Sin's case, that registered Graf as a drummer, and because of that, he receives a 40-point deduction penalty for breaking the rules.
Hey everybody, Future JT here to make a quick correction. I meant to say that because Brok was registered as a drummer, he simply just broke the rules of the papers he signed. It's not so much that it registered Graf as a drummer why he got a 40-point deduction, it was just more so because Brok registered as a drummer, period. Just wanted to make that quick correction because, haha, I had a brain fart when writing this script. It happens to the best of us. Okay, back to the retrospective.
So you need at least 90 points by the final results to get this ending. Fail his exams and ooh boy, you just unlock the pathway for the other 10 endings. So let's talk about that canonical ending to pick things back up. As I said, if you fail Graf's exams, he'll become understandably devastated. So in an act of desperation, he seeks out the Gloom so he can hack the school's servers and give him a passing grade. If you're wondering how Graf even knows about the Gloom, it's because he noticed an invoice from him in their mail slot earlier in the day for that favor Brok completed earlier in the story, along with a bank statement for 100,000 unis, aka dollars, addressed to him from his mother, thinking it was an inheritance she left behind for him. Fortunately, the greedy little mouse happens to want 100,000 unis for his services, and being the humongous coincidence that it is, Graf hands over his bank statement as payment, with Otta strongly disagreeing with his choice. But it was a trap, as after leaving his quarters, the Gloom contacts the Squealers to kidnap Graf and hold him hostage as insurance, seeing as the Gloom is in debt with them, and unfortunately, Graf and Otta are taken by the Squealers. Meanwhile, Brok, D, and Dr. Gherkin make it to the bunker to escape the Tribot's pursuit, but shortly after making it inside, D locks the doctor to the wall, saying enough of the bullshit and demands answers from him. Not getting what she asked for, she electroshocks the doctor, knocking him out for the time being. However, Brok knows D hasn't told the whole truth about herself and demands more answers. She explains she's been investigating the slow changes happening in society and came across an important discovery. But when someone thought she was getting a little too close to the truth, they fabricated video footage that made it look like Sin was cheating on her. Believing and being enraged by this while also hearing her colleagues poke fun of her situation, she quits her job and thus lost her best means of spreading information. As if things couldn't get any worse for her, all backups she had stored on the Triweb, aka the internet, on her discovery suddenly vanished except for a memory chip she always keeps on her, but it was damaged during one of her investigations, so she got it repaired by the Gloom. Just then, the doctor regains consciousness, and before D can electroshock him again, Jesus Christ, calm down there, D, Brok stops her and plans to get the information out of him with some good old interrogation, and the discovery ain't entirely a pleasant one. He admits he is indeed one of the 3 members of the government, and that he was genuinely trying to fix the pipe pills in the slums. However, he believes that one of the other members might be responsible for having the Tribots gun after Brok and ruining D's life. He also states that when a decision wants to be made between each member of the government, it takes all 3 votes to be approved for the decision to pass, while just 1 against it will have it blocked. D then shares that the discovery she made was that once someone is put in jail, they're sentenced to death 2 days later no matter what crime they committed. Since prisoner sentences are determined by the government, Dr. Gherkin is shocked how one of the members found a workaround so only their vote is the one that matters. Brok suddenly remembers that it's been exactly 2 days since Sin was put in jail and that his life is in danger. Brok releases the doctor so he can help find a way past the surrounding robots, and he does thanks to some maximum shockage that destroys the Tribots in one swoop, except not, my game glitched and they were still there. But don't worry, they're dead on the inside. They make their escape, but D keeps the doctor locked in the bunker since she's not done questioning him. Poor pickle man. After making it to the police station, they find that Sin is gone from his cell, but shortly after, he contacts them to inform them of his situation. He says that Wes was the one that released him, and that the Tribots are also chasing him, but he managed to escape them for the time being by hiding in his apartment. Wanting to go help her man, D is about to leave, but then Wes suddenly shows up wanting to know what's going on. D explains to Wes that she has proof on the secrets the government has been hiding, so Wes wants to meet in a discreet location so they can share their information where no one could possibly be listening on them, and because Wes suspects there's something more to this mystery too. Elsewhere, Graf and Otta are currently being held captive in the Squealer's base where the leader explains to Graf why he has such a grudge towards Brok. Long story short, Brok was one of the people that helped take down the Squealers during their coup 10 years ago, and the leader has a picture of Brok during those events as proof. You can see this picture for the first time during Graf's final exam in the museum earlier on, but the portion that has Brok in it is cut off, so Graf just takes it as his imagination getting the best of him. Oh, if only you knew, kitty cat. He also says that he and his gang aren't responsible for the broken pipe pills and that they noticed Tribots wrecking them for some reason. The leader actively mindfucks with Graf, saying Brok is actually a really violent person and that he's only been keeping Graf alive long enough to get his inheritance, seeing as he'll have access to the money when he turns 16 in just 3 days. After that? After getting home from his bunker shenanigans, Brok realizes Graf isn't home and begins to worry, so he seeks out the big lovable RJ for help. RJ says that he did see Graf and Ott make their way towards Squealer territory and offers to help Brok save his son and Ott from potential danger. D then tries to contact Brok, wondering where he is, and RJ volunteers to look for Graf and Ott while Brok goes to meet up with D. Yeah, those Squealers are fucked once RJ shows up. Brok and D then reconvene with Wes at the meetup spot, but right when D is about to hand over her memory chip, Brok stops her, stating that something isn't quite right with the whole meetup and interrogates Wes, and big surprise time, it's revealed that Wes is not only another member of the government, but actually a really sophisticated robot, which no joke I called like at the end of chapter 2. Seriously, once I got to this scene where you're on the phone with Wes, which you can only get if you fail to escape the prison in chapter 2, and suddenly you get poor reception, I started getting suspicious since my mindset was, I didn't get poor reception when I was talking on the phone with Sin. Man's a robot. If you have a knack for paying attention and remembering information, then the whole Wes is a robot reveal isn't surprising at all. To bring back up the director, during chapter 3 when she requests Brok's help to get the self-modifier chip, she also brings up the fact that there's another more advanced bot just like her and that we've already met it. RJ also says that Wes has changed in recent years and became colder towards his officers. There's a moment in chapter 3 where Brok finds a drawing in Wes's office while investigating that looks incomplete and a note from one of his officers saying that Wes suddenly stopped drawing suspects. Then you learn later that bots don't have any artistic capabilities, and there's a burnt power socket in his office, which later in chapter 4, Dr. Ming tells you that older robot models that are plugged in can cause power sockets to burn, so yeah. The hints are everywhere. But getting back on topic, Wes attempts to take the memory chip from D by shooting her, but Brok thinks fast and eats it to prevent Wes from getting it. Yeah, you ain't getting that back. In his anger, he shoots D again, goddamn, and sends his robots to destroy them. Now you can fight Wes and his bots legitimately. Or you can use this remote that you find in Sin's apartment that temporarily disables robots but will one-shot the boss because he's standing in a puddle of water. Fuck this show, what else is on? Wes is down, but not out, and in his annoyance, oh, what's that? He shoots D a third time. God damn, leave the poor woman alone already! Afterwards, Wes calls in a mech. Man, this game is getting nuts. And the final boss begins. And it's gone! Wes seems out, but has enough energy to get Brok in a hold while explaining the reasons for his actions. Long story short, he was a human at one point until 5 years ago, where he got into a car accident chasing a suspect, and his memories got placed into a bot by someone he only refers to as the Creator. After seeing so much crime happening in the slums, he decided, you know what, fuck the slums, and decided to purge the slums and all its inhabitants to make Adlasia a better place. But before he can finish off Brok, his mech gets destroyed by the sudden intervention of the school director. She reveals that she's the third member of the government and she's here to put a stop to Wes's plans. Oh, and also that she too was once a human, but due to an accident, her memories were placed into a bot. You learn that fact from Outta Dick Clay in chapter 4 during Graph section. The director then puts Wes in a chokehold and prepares to detonate herself to finish off using the self-modifier chip as a power boost to overclock herself thanks to Brok's help earlier on. Just then, Ott and Graf show up after escaping the custody of the Squealers thanks to RJ, just in time for Ott to see what his uncle really is. After the director pleads with Ott to understand once she explains the situation to him, Ott understands that this is something that must be done. The director explodes, taking Wes with her, but he manages to survive for a bit longer as a head saying the country will soon fall into ruin without the triangle around. Soon after, Wes goes and finally dies. Brok then pushes a button on Headless Wes that fixes the pipe pills, and now Tox-Out pills are dispensing in the slums again. All seems good until out of nowhere, Graf gets a pole thrown at him, knocking him unconscious by the Squealer leader, and goddamn, RJ really fucked him up! You know, you can fight this guy legitimately in the first chapter if you decide not to blow him up, and after the fight, he still looks fine, but my boy RJ fucked him up good.
Should have broken your neck.
And I bet you could, you absolute beefcake. Witnessing this, though, puts Brok in a blind rage and begins to beat the shit out of the leader, almost killing him, which the leader is completely fine with if it means everyone sees Brok for the monster he truly is. Graf wakes up, and thanks to him and everyone else reminding Brok he's not a murderer, he stops his assault on the leader, only knocking him unconscious. However, once Brok and Graf return home, things take a turn for the worse. Due to the leader filling his head with doubt and seeing Brok almost kill a man, Graf begins to question Brok's motives for watching him and really goes off the deep end. Seriously, he goes off on Brok hard. Some of it's justified with the fact that Brok always keeps secrets from him, but the rest seems completely out of line. Talking mad shit about his deceased mother, calling her trash and shit. I know he's a young teen and angry about everything that he's been through in his life, especially in these last 3 days, but all of this just seems cruel to say. He also learns that the money he thought was an inheritance from his mother is actually out of Brok's pocket. She only made the account, but every day for 6 years, Brok put 50 units in that account so that Graf could start fresh when he moved into the drums. Obviously that didn't happen and he essentially wasted the money, so yay, everybody's upset. In his rage hearing Graf disrespect his own mother, Brok slams the table and makes a ceiling lamp fall right on top of Graf. Has that always been up there? Graf wakes up, yells at Brok some more, and goes into his room, with Brok leaving to be alone with his thoughts. Realizing that he went off the deep end with his comments, you think? Graf suddenly gets a message again from the unknown user from Chapter 4. The mystery user tries to convince Graf to leave Brok, seeing as he's only holding him back. Getting rightfully suspicious, Graf asks the user who they are, with them replying that it's just somebody Graf knew from a long time ago, and then signs off before answering any more questions. Meanwhile, Brok looks over the horizon, lamenting everything that's happened and briefly considers suicide, but realizes he can't give up yet and needs to keep fighting. Once he returns home, Brok finds a note on the table from Graf saying that he's sorry for all the trouble he's caused him and that he's left to live his own life, wanting Brok to have a fresh start of his own. Really not knowing what to do now, Brok wishes he had another chance to change things. Suddenly, the envelope Shay gave him falls out of his pocket. All the note says is that Shay has been keeping a secret from him and to be a detective and to figure out what it is. Seeing as he has nothing better to do, Brok tries to solve the riddle and... Y'all ready for this? Okay, so it turns out that the secret that Shay has been hiding from Brok the whole time involves time travel. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to try to explain this to the best of my ability, so forgive me if I butcher some details. So apparently, all the events that have happened during these last few days have already happened before, albeit with some slight changes thanks to the work of Shay's time machine, but it only seems to affect Brok. You can see this machine hidden under a blanket as early as the first time you meet Shay, but all she says is that it's a secret invention she's been working on. One character detail about Brok is that his memory isn't exactly intact in that he doesn't recall certain events, like being the one responsible for the Squealer's banishment. That's because, and I apologize again if I butcher this, the time machine can both change events and suppress his memories, I think? It's also the reason why he quote-unquote survived his encounter with the Squealers in Chapter 3. But here's where I'm a little confused. How was Brok saved here? Was it Shay using the time machine? No, it can't be because the machine wasn't operational at that point. Or was it another version of Shay or Brok from a different timeline that saved us? I honestly can't say, peoples. If anyone knows a better way of explaining it, please let me know, and don't be a dick about it. Anyways, getting back on track here. Brok heads to Shay's for some answers, but her door now has this lock on it and needs a noun, verb, and another noun to open. After putting in time erases memory, the door opens, which, fun fact, you can come here earlier before this point and find Shay in the middle of working on the time machine, but because of timey-wimey bullshit, you'll get a game over here. After heading inside, he sees the time machine, but Shay is nowhere to be seen. He powers it on with his necklace, which I haven't mentioned until now is not only a memento from Leah, but also made of heptamite, the most powerful energy source in the world. He sets the machine to 5 years ago in order to save Leah from the fire and to change the recent events. After that, he heads into the machine. He then finds himself in this universal plane of existence where he's met with a remnant of his last visit here, showing that this isn't the first time he's been here. His past self tells him to enter the void if he wants to change destiny, which upon hearing that the first time, I laughed just because of how far the story has come. With no hesitation, Brok heads into the unknown to make his own destiny. However, if you manage to get every other ending and collect all the collectibles, you get a bonus ending of a man in cryostasis from what it looks like, saying that he'll take back what's his and that Brok can't stop him. Oh, and if you're wondering what happened to Professor Pickle, Dee escorted him out of the country so he can lay low while the situation cooled down. Sorry, Brok, the poverty life is strong with you. Good God, was that a hell of a trip or what? Look folks, if I have to be completely honest, I love this story, its characters and its atmosphere without a doubt. But in my personal opinion, I think the whole time travel plot point was unnecessary. If we needed a reason for Brok's shoddy memory, I think it would have benefited more if they followed up on the whole oblivion pill that Sin mentions. Seeing as he states it suppresses memories and the fact that the government kept it tight-lipped, I don't know, it just seemed like a missed opportunity to make that plot point more relevant than it was. Maybe it was originally the plan and they decided to change their mind? Can't really say. However, where I think the time travel gimmick wasn't needed in plot, I love how it's implemented into the gameplay. So get this shit, right? After you get any ending for the first time, you unlock a summary graph showing what route you took to get that ending, as well as paths and hints on how to get to the other endings. But not only does it show you your progress, you can also choose to warp to any chapter in the game and even some sections within those chapters to help you get the other endings. Not only that, but say you do an action in an early chapter and then fast forward to another chapter. Your previous action will then carry over to the current chapter. For example, if you have Brok's relationship with Graf high enough between chapter 1 and before the end of chapter 2 and then jump forward in time, you'll already have the picture they took together in your inventory. An item you can only get if your relationship with him is at 55% or higher by the end of chapter 2. And as I said, it makes getting the other endings much easier. When I played this game for the first time and got the drummer ending, I got a message saying in order to get the canonical ending, I have to make sure Graf fails his exams. Initially, that annoyed me because I thought I had to go through the whole game again just to purposely fail, and that I went out of my way to actively try during those trials just to be told to fail next time for the real ending. But after finding out that I can jump chapters, I quickly got over it. Oh right, speaking of which, I should probably talk about those other endings, huh? The broken detective ending happens when you fail the interrogation against Wes, or when you back out of asking him to show his butt plug. Why did I write that? Wes then shoots and kills Brok and D, takes the memory chip, and moves Graf and Otta to the drums while everyone else in the slums dies due to the lack of tox-out pills, with Graf and Otta none the wiser to Wes's true identity. Well, that was depressing. But still a much shorter explanation than the several pages I typed talking about the canonical ending, so on to the next ending! The diary ending happens when instead of taking the time machine, you enter Shay's room and open up her locked dresser, which I won't even lie, I looked up what the code was since for the life of me, I couldn't figure out where it was in game. Inside is Shay's diary where she talks about the time anomaly and her secret feelings for Brok. But if you've been paying attention throughout the game, you already knew she had some feelings for him. Shortly after reading it, Shay appears and tells Brok to leave before the anomaly wipes them out of existence, but Brok refuses, saying he's tired of running and just wants to spend his last moments with her. They then both fade out of reality along with her shop, embracing each other. Aww, how sweet. Shame about the whole wiped out of existence though. The Outta loop ending happens if you decide to start up the time machine, but leave to go back home. Graf returns shortly, saying what he wrote still stands, but that they should take a break from all the drama for now. Brok tells Graf that there's a way to change the recent events and brings Graf to Shay's place. However, when they return, the time machine has suddenly vanished and Brok being like, I know I parked it here. Soon after stepping outside wondering where the hell the machine and Shay have gone, the garage starts vanishing along with Graf, who was still inside it. Once they vanish, a hatless Brok is left standing there questioning where he is and why he's there. Though he thought he had a kid, he just pushes that aside, saying he's always been a loner, and then makes his way to the fight pits with no memory of Shay or Graf. Oh, and the reason he's hatless is because Graf was the one who got him that hat. So yeah, that was an ending. In order to get the fight together ending, RJ has to die from having a relationship with him low enough by the time he passes out outside the Gloom's hideout and you go to retrieve the professor to help him. This leaves Brok to make the choice of meeting with D at the meetup with Wes or to save Graf and Otta from the Squealer's captivity. But to get this ending, you gotta save the boys. Brok heads down to the sewers to the Squealer's base, beats the shit out of the Squealers and their leader, rescues Graf and Otta, and they make their way to meet up with D. Unfortunately, D is found dead with no one knowing what happened. Shortly after, Brok and Graf get ambushed by Tribots with Otta leaving to go get help. Brok and Graf fight through hordes of bots with Otta coming in clutch with a device that immediately destroys them. Afterwards, Brok and Graf head home where Graf decides to stay in the slums in order to stay at Brok's side and to make the slums a better place. This ending would be one of the better ones if it didn't mean D and RJ. That's just my opinion, but you all know I'm right! The Rupture ending happens if Graf and Otta are able to escape from the Squealer's hideout. They then show up at the showdown with Wes right after the whole he's a robot reveal. They attempt to protect Brok from Wes with Otta telling his uncle there has to be another way to save the slums. Wes then answers back by attempting to kill Graf, saying that if it wasn't for his family, he and the world wouldn't be like this. Brok then takes the shot for Graf, becoming unconscious and mortally wounded while Wes escapes confused on why Brok would sacrifice himself like that. Brok regains consciousness a week later in a Drums hospital with Graf saying that they've been made honorary members of the government by the director for their heroism. Unfortunately, Brok has become paralyzed from the waist down due to the bullet hitting his spine. He then decides to be analyzed by doctors to see if a cure can be made from his DNA, seeing as he's immune to the effects of the slum's haze. Yeah, I haven't really talked about it since it's not that plot important, even though you'd think it would be, but yeah. Brok is immune to the haze. He says he used to take tox-out pills, then one day, he realized he didn't need to anymore, so... Neat. Though a permanent vaccine couldn't be made, Graf and Ott got a team to work on a separate project. And thanks to the miracle of science, Brok is shown standing on his feet once again. I wish y'all heard me when I first saw this ending, because I was super upset when I heard Brok couldn't walk anymore, but the moment I saw this picture, I went, ah! The Slumer ending is easily the best ending in the game in my opinion. All you have to do is follow the events of the canonical ending, but make sure your relationship with Graf is at 80% or more by the time of the final showdown with Wes. Much like the Fight Together ending, Graf chooses to stay with Brok in the slums with Ott heading to the drums. They decide they can collaborate with each other from each side to better understand the world and make it a better place. Brok even takes them to a concert to celebrate all they've accomplished, and that's just awesome. This ending is the best to me since unlike the Fight Together and Drummer ending, everyone can survive at the end, sort of. They can get a happy ending, and you uncover the truth and solve the problem regarding Wes. This is the canon ending in my eyes, and every time I see it, I get a stupid grin on my face. Shame about Shay though. To get the Till the End of Time ending, you need to choose to fight the Squealers when they attempt to kidnap Graf and Ott. If you win the fight, one of the Squealers will hold Ott hostage, telling Graf to come back with them or else they'll hurt Ott. Choose to continue the fight though, and the Squealer will snap Ott's neck out of fear. Why does everyone I love in this game die? The Squealers flee from the scene with Graf mourning over the death of his friend. Time passes and Brok finds Graf over Ott's body, telling him he'll inform Ott's parents of what happened, and the two head back home. Graf locks himself inside his room and Brok wonders what to do next. Just like the canonical ending, Brok remembers the envelope he got from Shay, and that plays out the same, only with Brok bringing Graf with him to see the time machine, only you know, he actually sees it, unlike the Outta loop ending. Brok sets the time machine like he does in the canonical ending, but Graf goes inside the machine surprising Brok in order to go back and save Ott. Brok tells Graf that he set the machine's date to the day they lost Leah, and he's perfectly okay with that if it means he gets to see and save his mom too. The two say goodbye, hoping to see each other again, and the machine takes off. 50 years pass, and Graf returns to see an old Brok who has managed to make the slums a safe place by turning it into the void. Seriously, how did Brok do this? Because it's never explained how. Man is omnipotent. Anyways, Graf tells Brok he was able to see his mom again, but unfortunately he wasn't able to save her or Ott due to the machine starting to fail at some point. Wanting to use Brok's pendant to charge the machine and try to fix things again, Brok tells Graf that won't be necessary and he just wants to spend what time he has left with his son, and the two share a loving embrace. This is definitely one of the more heartwarming endings when it comes to Brok and Graf's relationship, but now it's time for... Okay, so the Cynical Ending is by far the most what the fuck ending in the whole game. To get this ending, all you have to do is beat the shit out of the time machine, and in doing so, Brok will teleport to a random ass living room with an actual cat and dead rat on the floor and a coffin in someone's bedroom?
I don't feel safe.
Then when you try to leave, you get stopped by an actual human woman and her child, who doesn't question your gator-looking ass at all, by the way. Then a man shows up with his daughter, who looks like him? Afterwards, Brok yells up to Shay telling her to get him out of there, but she says she can't, seeing as he broke the machine and now he's lost in time forever. Brok asks if he can try again and Shay says sure, after the credits. Apparently, this ending is a cameo based off Cowcat's other game called Demetrios, something like that. The Big Cynical Adventure. But I haven't played this game, so maybe it makes more sense with the game's context? Or not, I don't know. But what I do know is don't touch the power socket and Bjorleen is the stuff of nightmares. But let me tell you folks right now, out of all the endings I've talked about thus far, they pale in comparison to the final ending I'm about to talk about, and that is the fall ending. Okay, so I have to be completely honest with you guys. I didn't get any footage for this ending. Not because the ending itself is hard to get, it's actually very simple. But because the first time I got this ending, it depressed me so much, I didn't want to get this ending again. No joke, in an already depressing game, this depressed me even more. So I didn't record any footage for this retrospective. But I don't want to leave you guys hanging, so to make up for it, I'll explain the ending by showing off crude drawings. Enjoy. Oh, okay. To get this ending, all you have to do is make sure your brawn percentage is at 80% or higher by the time you reach the final showdown with Wes, which you can do by solving puzzles and problems throughout the game by simply punching them instead of actually solving them. More on that later. When you get to the part where Brok almost kills the Squealer leader, he'll actually kill the Squealer leader by snapping his neck with everyone watching being horrified. Then, when you get to the bit where Brok slams the table out of frustration and makes a ceiling lamp fall on Graf, he'll instead just, you know, beat the shit out of Graf, promptly killing him as a result. Oh, this ending. And then, when Brok snaps back from his rage and realizes he just murdered Graf, he'll follow up on what he almost did in the canonical ending and kill himself by falling off the top of the apartment complex. Yeah. Pretty dark, right? Look, say what you will, but after witnessing this ending once already, I had no desire to see it again just for the sake of having footage for this retrospective. If you want to see the actual ending, play the game yourself or watch the ending on YouTube from another YouTuber, cause you sure as shit ain't getting it from me, I tell you what. Whew! And with that, I've successfully talked about all the endings in the game. I could go into more detail about the many routes you can take to reach those endings, but I'd be here all damn day if I did that, and I don't want this video going on too long. But how about we give some of the characters we meet along the journey some attention? Seeing as they're the main characters, Brok and Graf obviously get the most attention. Brok is the kind-hearted detective who always tries to help people out. Though he often has rotten luck and struggles to make ends meet with his bills, it doesn't stop him from trying to solve people's problems. Not just because it's his job as a detective, but also because he genuinely wants to help the slums be a better place, seeing as it's his home. I should also mention that Brok and Graf were once drummers in the past, but after Leah's passing and because they benefited off her being a drummer, they had to move to the slums. Though Brok thinks it was for the best, seeing as the drummer life wasn't his cup of tea. Seriously, I only want this man to be happy, and every time I see him upset, my heart shatters. And the love he has for Graf and how he only wants him to be happy in life is just the icing on the cake. Speaking of Graf, he's a character that does try to do the right thing when the situation rises and is a kind person all around, and I like him for that. But I'll admit that his constant outburst towards Brok kinda deters me from liking him as much as the Gator. Again, yes, I know, he's been through a lot in his life, especially at his age, and with Brok keeping secrets from him constantly, it doesn't help his situation. But whenever I see those moments of him going off on Brok, especially when he doesn't deserve it, it is a little hard to watch. Especially that last bit in the canonical ending, Jesus Christ. Still, I do love when he and Brok have their heart-to-heart moments. Those are always nice to see. And he's nowhere near as much of an asshole as buttfucker Clay! Ugh. So, if you haven't caught it by now, because I've been so subtle with it thus far, I don't like Clay. He's the typical school jackass who always gives Graf and Otta shit, but that's not the entire reason I don't like him. So, there's a moment in Chapter 4 during his and Graf's exams where they have to work together. Before they start, they decide to have a little heart-to-heart of their own, with Clay telling him that even though his mom is a robot, he still loves her as if she was still human. But then, when Graf tries to sympathize with him by talking about his own mom and dad, he makes the unnecessary comment of saying, well, at least I'd still rather have a robot mom than a dead one, and that his dad left him because he knew what kind of son he had, and I'm like, you utter shit stain on Itlasia. Then there's another moment where Clay begs Graf not to tell his mom about him stealing Graf's Tox-Out pill and leaving him for dead. If you choose not to snitch on him, he'll immediately tell you good choice and to keep your mouth shut and My main problem with Clay is that every time there's a moment where he seems like he's becoming a better person, he does an immediate 180 and goes back to the asshole. Which is why once I found out you can kill him during your exam and the story would still continue, my ass ain't hesitate. Yeah, I restarted after I killed him because I was afraid where the story might go without him and because I thought he'd be a better person as the story continued, but that doesn't mean killing him didn't feel any less satisfying. Yeah, it's shit, you little shit!
This was an accident.
No, it wasn't. I wanted that nigga dead. Graf's friend Otta is also another character I really ended up loving a lot. Though he gets shit for being a hybrid, that being part pig and part otter, which is rare in their society, he sees it as him being unique and rolls with it, and that's just an awesome mindset to have. He's an all-around good person and great friend to Graf, and I always enjoy seeing him on screen, which is why it utterly broke my heart when I had to get the ending where he Dee is just a straight badass who wants to help the slums by providing the truth to the world. She also knows how to kick ass way more effectively than her husband, who just pelts me with unlimited shot glasses. My guy, you are a kangaroo! Kick the shit out of me or something! Easy to tell who's on top in this relationship. There's also this brief moment where it seems like there's a fling happening between her and Brok, but the game never follows up on it. Even if Sin ends up dying at the end if your relationship with him isn't high enough, they still never become a thing. Maybe the writers changed their mind at the last minute? Who knows? Graf's dad, Rem, is someone that only gets sprinkled here and there throughout the story. He left Graf when he was 5 and then just supposedly vanished off the face of the earth, with no one knowing if he's dead or alive, except potentially the director and Wes. It's also probably safe to say that he's the creator Wes and the director mentions. Wes had that file on an R-Filch on his computer, which is no doubt a file on Rem, and if you decide to kill Clay, the director will suddenly show up to Graf's home and meet him to give him a tox-out pill, and to tell him that he must live, seeing as the exams he's been taking were made specifically with him in mind. She also says that her and Graf are essentially the creator's sons, and I'm like, I'm picking up what you're putting down, game. It's also a safe bet that Rem is the one we see in cryostasis in the true ending, so I'm curious where that'll go in the sequel. Though I don't think the whole time travel plot point relating to her was needed, Shay as a character I fucking love. She's the brilliant scientist with a sassy attitude and a quirky personality to boot. She's also a little nuts. No joke, when you meet her for the first time, she almost gets Brok killed because she has a buzzsaw defense measure at her front door. I know we live in the slums, but goddamn! When you go to the Gloom to pay him off for Shay, he'll tell you to be careful around her, seeing as she allegedly escaped from one of the most well-known asylums 9 years ago, so yeah, she's got a couple of screws loose. But hey, she's still entertaining. Look, she may be loony, but she's my loony. But without a doubt, one of my favorite characters in the whole game is the old tramp that lives outside your apartment. Now, I haven't really talked about him outside the opening of Chapter 1, seeing as he has no real relevance to the story, but goddamn, do I love him. Like I said earlier, he initially was going to be killed by the Squealers for buying medication from them and not paying what he owed. That was until Brok stopped them. You can ignore this and get the tramp killed for not helping him, but if you do that, you're a monster that'll find me in your closet seeking vengeance. After you help him, cause I'm not giving you a choice, he says that he has an incurable disease and that his medication helps stabilize him from it. Being the kind soul that he is, Brok offers to help him out, so the tramp gives him his medical prescription to see if he can get him more of his medication. Now, helping out the tramp spreads through the whole game, and if you don't help him by the time you interrogate Sin, he'll die by the start of the next chapter, and you don't want that, right? Right? What you have to do is purchase some glucosite from the pharmacy since it helps slow down the effects of his disease, seeing as his prescription has expired and needs to be renewed before you can get his actual medication. You can grind money for it by doing VR fights at Shay's as Brok. After you give it to him, you have two ways of giving him his medication. You can A, give his prescription to Dr. Mink in Chapter 4, where he'll renew it for you and then you can get his medicine from the pharmacy and deliver it in Chapter 5. Or B, you can bring Dr. Gherkin to him after you've saved RJ and the doctor will prescribe his meds to him. Manage to save him and be on the route to the true ending, and you learn his secret. When you go back to see him, he's suddenly gone and a note for Brok is left behind. He thanks Brok again for all he's done and says that he's left the country to live his life to the fullest. Then he reveals that his name is Rick and that he's actually an old war buddy of Brok's grandpa, who originally was asked by him to watch over Brok. But Rick refused, seeing as he still was in the military at the time and thought he couldn't balance both work and family. Feeling guilty, he purposely lived outside your apartment once he learned who Brok was in order to keep an eye on him and to make sure he grew up right. He even leaves a lucky charm that saves you from a fatal blow with each new fight, kinda like Second Chance in Kingdom Hearts. I don't know what it is about Rick I love so much, but he just clicks with me. I mean, I do have a weakness for kind-hearted characters, and whenever he calls me my boy, I get a smile on my face. Also, look at this art of him from the art book. My God, I love this man. I literally just told you note for note how to save this man. You have no excuse! Well, now that we've covered the story, let's finally get into the gameplay. Like I said earlier, this game is classified as a punch-and-click adventure game. Gone are the days of putt-putt, and in comes Brok with his fist of fury! This game is really good when it comes to giving you the choice of solving a problem with your brain or your brawn. Like I said earlier as an example, you can deal with the Squealers in Chapter 1 by simply beating their asses, or you can blow them up in one swoop by fixing and dropping a mine into a pipe mail straight into their base. Hell, just to enter their hideout, you can either solve this puzzle on the manhole to open it, or you can just jump up and down on it until it eventually gives. After the interrogation with Sin, you can fight him one-on-one, or you can drug his drink before the interrogation and avoid the fight altogether. Aside from potentially getting the fall ending though, there's no real consequence for using brawn more than brain other than some dialogue changes. Though I will admit, I did have a huge bad habit of restarting my save every time I made a choice I thought was the wrong one, completely ignoring the point of the multiple ending aspect. So if you plan on playing this game for yourself, don't do what I did and instead just roll with whatever choice you happen to make. It'll make whatever ending you get all the more surprising. If you're ever stuck at any point, you can use these collectible ads you can find throughout the game that'll help point you in the right direction. There's always 3 in every section, so keep that in mind when you're looking for them. You also need all 111 in order to get the true ending of the game, so keep your eyes peeled. These are easier to find though if you have Bolt's help. He's a robot you encounter in Chapter 1 who got fired from his job and Brok decides to give him another job working for Shay. For 20 UDIS a pop, he'll just straight up tell you where a missing ad is located, which saves you a lot of time if you're having trouble finding ads. He can only detect one at a time, but it's still better than nothing. There's also the interrogation bits I brought up earlier, where you can pick 2 pieces of info that connect in order to proceed with the interrogation and discover new info as a result. For comparison's sake, think of it like Edgeworth's logic sections in Ace Attorney Investigations. That's the first thing I thought about anyway. There's no real consequence for getting one of these wrong if you happen to mess up, unless it's the interrogation with Wes where you're only allowed 6 mistakes before D gives Wes the chip. Mess up too many times and oh, looky that, you got the broken detective ending. I also think the interrogation with Tidy goes on way too long. It's easily the longest one, ranging at around 40 minutes long, and that's if you're guessing everything right first try. They make you gather all that evidence and by golly, you're gonna use it. If you guess the wrong culprit, yeah, the interrogation is way shorter, but it's later said in an article that the true culprit murders the rest of the workers, so if you're going for the best ending, be prepared for the long haul. When you're using Brawn on puzzles or on enemies, then the game becomes a classic beat 'em up, and who doesn't like a beat 'em up? You got your basic 1-2 punch combo with the square button and you can block and evade attacks by holding the circle button. Like a lot of beat 'em up games, you also have a special move you can use when you're in a tight situation, but it'll drain some of your health as a result. Not a lot though, so it's not too risky. When your health is halfway down, you'll begin to build up a special meter. When it's full, you can unleash an ultimate beatdown on an enemy or multiple ones in a group, but you can't control what enemies you target when you activate it, so Brok just kinda does what he wants. Graf's special is the better one of the two in my opinion. When his is activated, he gets a power and defense buff for 30 seconds, which is really helpful for those horde fights. Now I thought the special meter only filled up when your health was low enough. Aside from eating a pizza that instantly fills your meter to the max, I actually learned while recording footage for this that you can sacrifice your health by holding L2 to fill up your special meter yourself. And the cool thing is that if you choose to level up your health, this risk versus reward mechanic easily just becomes reward, since you'll always have more than enough health to sacrifice to constantly spam your special. Even more so if you have healing items on you to refill your health. Speaking of leveling up, whenever you do after beating up enough baddies, you can choose to level up your attack power, health cap, or decreasing the wait time for your special meter to fill up. Personally, I rarely if ever level up that last one given what I said earlier, so I mainly stick to leveling up my power since I'm a firm believer of the best defense is a strong offense. I level up my health too. It really comes in useful after a fight since when you level it up, it also refills your health to the max, which is great. Out of the two, I prefer playing as Graf more than Brok in terms of combat. Don't get me wrong, Brok is awesome to play as, and his raw power due to his days as a boxer really shows, but he's not the most agile of the two. Graf is fast, floaty, and can be just as strong if you grind him out in VR fights. I always pick Skate in my Streets of Rage 2 days, so fast attacking characters is what I'm used to. But fuck, man, does Graf start with such a pitiful health cap? Doesn't take a lot for his health to start draining when you're in the thick of a fight. Makes getting the fight together ending kind of a pain since without level grinding, the Skrillers will easily wipe the floor with you. Granted, Graf doesn't get nearly as much love in the combat department as Brok, but when you do have to fight as him, take my advice and grind out XP in VR fights. VR fights really are a great way to level up both characters, but I'd say only Brok truly benefits from it, seeing as he gets both experience and money from them afterwards, so he's making bank. Graf only gets experience seeing as he does VR fights legally through his laptop while Brok does it illegally through an actual VR setup. Look, rent ain't gonna pay itself, so fuck the law. All money does for Graf in VR is refill his health, cause I guess that makes sense, but it does make his fights in them easier to get through since enemies always drop money so you always have health. Damn, Graf out here taking lives, wallets, and their life forces. Man's unstable. I'm happy to say that I enjoyed my time with Brok the Investigator throughout the whole journey. What went from a 20-minute demo transformed into a 90+ hour adventure. Yeah, I may think the time travel plot point was unnecessary, but that didn't stop me from loving the story as a whole. From its gameplay, interesting cast of characters, nice soundtrack, and eye-catching set pieces, this game is definitely a keeper. Seriously, I loved this game so much that I went out of my way to purchase the digital art book for it, and I've never done that for a game before. And the art in this book has so much charm to it. I will never tire of this shave face. There's also fan art you can unlock in-game too that gets updated frequently with even more fan art, and it's so cool to see so many other people love this game too. Now this is a man who fucks, and Clay only has one art of him? Well, at least someone out there likes you, you unbearable taint. Definitely worth its $20 price tag, so show Cowcat some love and support and buy this game, please. So with all that said, y'all have a good night, thanks for watching, and remember, I'm only okay. Catch y'all in the next video, laters!